"Do you agree?" she asked. "I just want your yes," the cowboy replied calmly. The late afternoon sun hung low over the ranch, casting long, golden shadows across the open fields. Dust rose in small swirls as the wind swept across the dry ground, rustling the tall grasses and whispering through the leaves of the scattered oak trees. A few horses grazed quietly near the wooden fence, their tails flicking lazily as they nibbled at the last patches of green. The air carried the faint scent of hay and leather, and somewhere in the distance, a dog barked sharply, breaking the calm, gentle hum of the countryside. On the porch of a small, weathered cabin, a woman stood, her fingers gripping the railing. Her eyes followed the slow, steady movement of the horses in the field. The ranch had always been a place of peace for her, a place where problems seemed smaller against the vast, open sky. Yet today, her heart felt heavy, and the sunlight that usually warmed her felt too bright, almost too revealing, as if it were exposing all the uncertainty she carried inside. She had come here with a question she had been holding onto for weeks. It was a question that mattered more than she could admit, not just to herself, but to the people she cared about. She needed an answer, someone's guidance to help her make the right choice. She had thought carefully about it, and she knew that this decision could change the course of her life. She had weighed the risks, imagined the outcomes, and still, deep down, a part of her wanted reassurance, an affirmation that she was not making a mistake. The cowboy appeared quietly at the end of the path, his boots crunching softly against the gravel. He moved with a calm, deliberate rhythm, as if the world around him were moving too fast and he alone had the patience to keep pace with it. He was tall, with broad shoulders and a presence that seemed to fill the space even when he said nothing. His hat was pulled low, casting a shadow over his eyes, but she knew those eyes. They were steady, clear, and thoughtful, the kind of eyes that saw more than what was on the surface. He stopped a few steps away from her and nodded lightly, a small, almost imperceptible smile playing on his lips. "Afternoon," he said, his voice calm and measured, carrying the quiet strength of someone who had faced many storms without losing his balance. There was a comfort in that voice, a reassurance that no matter how heavy the moment felt, it was possible to face it without fear. "Afternoon," she replied, her voice slightly trembling despite her best effort to keep it steady. She had rehearsed this moment many times in her mind, imagining how it might go, the words she might say, the response she hoped to hear. But now, standing in front of him, the reality of it made her pulse quicken. She drew a slow breath, feeling the warm breeze brush against her cheeks, and finally, she asked the question she had been carrying like a stone in her chest. "Do you agree?" she asked, her eyes meeting his, searching for the hint of approval, the sign that he understood her and the choice she had made. The words felt small compared to the weight behind them. She had spent days, even weeks, thinking about how to phrase it, how to ask without sounding uncertain, yet uncertainty lingered in her tone. The cowboy's gaze held hers, steady and unwavering. For a moment he said nothing, letting the silence stretch between them. In that quiet, she could hear the soft rustling of leaves, the distant call of a bird, and the low whinny of a horse. She felt exposed under his gaze, as if he could see not just her question but the fear, the hope, and the determination behind it. Finally he spoke, his voice as calm and deliberate as ever. "I just want your yes," he said. The words were simple, almost casual, yet they carried a depth that made her heart catch. It was not a command nor a dismissal. It was an invitation, a quiet encouragement. He wasn't telling her what to do. He was giving her the power to choose for herself, to step forward with confidence, knowing that he trusted her judgment. She blinked, processing the weight of his words. There was something remarkable in the way he spoke, in the way he didn't pressure her but instead gave her space to find her own answer. His calmness was not indifference. It was understanding. It was faith. And that faith stirred something inside her, a mix of relief, courage, and quiet joy. The wind picked up slightly, carrying with it a few stray leaves that danced along the ground. She felt a sudden lightness, as though the weight of her uncertainty had lifted, even if just a little. The horses lifted their heads, ears pricked, sensing the tension in the air easing. The ranch, usually so still in the late afternoon, seemed to take a deep breath along with her. I think I'm ready," she said slowly, her voice gaining strength with each word. She looked at him, really looked at him, noticing the calm certainty in his stance, the gentle nod of his head that seemed to tell her that he understood completely. She felt a wave of gratitude for this moment, for the quiet support he offered without judgment, for the way he made it possible for her to trust herself. He smiled faintly, tipping his hat just enough to acknowledge her words. "That's all I needed," he said. "Your yes. Nothing else." The simplicity of his response made the moment feel even more profound. There were no complicated instructions, no pressure, no expectation other than the faith he placed in her own choice. She exhaled slowly, a breath she hadn't realized she had been holding. It was as if the tension that had coiled in her chest for so long had finally begun to unwind. She felt the warmth of the sun on her face, the solid ground beneath her feet, and the steady presence of someone who believed in her, standing right beside her. For the first time in weeks, maybe months, she felt a sense of clarity, a quiet certainty that she could move forward. They stood there for a moment longer in silence, letting the sounds of the ranch fill the space. The distant mountains cast long shadows across the fields, painting everything in soft shades of amber and gold. The world seemed larger somehow, more alive, yet the moment between them felt intimate, almost sacred. It was a reminder that sometimes, the simplest words, spoken with care and trust, could carry more power than the most elaborate speeches. As the sun continued its slow descent toward the horizon, she felt a newfound resolve settle within her. She knew the path ahead would not be without challenges, but for the first time, she felt ready to face them. Not because the cowboy had given her the answer, but because he had given her the space to find her own. His calm presence had been a guide, a quiet anchor in a moment of uncertainty. With a final nod to him, she stepped back from the railing, feeling lighter, stronger, and more certain than she had in days. The wind tousled her hair, carrying with it the scent of the open fields and the promise of what was to come. She glanced once more at the horses grazing peacefully, then turned her gaze toward the horizon, where the sun was beginning its slow, golden descent. And in that quiet moment, standing on the porch of the ranch she had always loved, she realized that the answer she had been seeking had been within her all along. The cowboy had not given her his yes. He had simply given her the gift of believing in her own. And that was more powerful than anything she could have imagined. The sun had begun its slow descent, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, as the ranch seemed to settle into a peaceful rhythm. The woman walked down the wooden steps of the porch, her boots making soft thuds against the worn boards. Her heart still carried the warmth of the conversation she had just shared with the cowboy. His words, simple yet profound, lingered in her mind. "I just want your yes." They were words that had carried more weight than any speech, more comfort than any promise. As she moved closer to the horses grazing in the distance, the cowboy followed at a steady pace, his calm presence reassuring. He didn't rush her, didn't speak unnecessarily. His silence was not empty. It was patient, allowing her to think, to breathe, and to feel confident in her own choices. There was a trust between them now, one that was quiet but deep, like the roots of an old tree that had withstood many storms. They reached the fence that bordered the main pasture, where a few horses lifted their heads, curious about the movement nearby. The woman paused and rested her hands lightly on the wooden rails. She glanced at the cowboy, noticing the small details she had never paid attention to before, the way his shoulders relaxed even when he stood still, the gentle tilt of his hat, the steady rhythm of his breathing. It was as if he carried a calm strength that could withstand any storm, and somehow, just by being near him, she felt stronger too. "I've been thinking about it all day," she said softly, her voice carrying more certainty now. "This decision, it's bigger than I realized. Bigger than I expected." She looked out at the fields, the rolling hills that stretched toward the horizon, and the distant mountains standing like silent guardians. "I know it's the right choice, but I keep wondering if I'm ready, if I can really do it." The cowboy listened without interrupting, letting her words flow freely. He nodded occasionally, just enough to show he was paying attention. His eyes never left hers, calm and steady, as though he were reminding her that she was not alone. The way he listened made her feel heard, understood, and supported in a way she had rarely experienced. She realized that sometimes, the most important support didn't come in advice or instructions. It came in quiet presence, in unwavering attention, and in the knowledge that someone trusted you completely. "You've thought this through," he said finally, his voice calm, steady, and reassuring. "I can see it. I can see that you've considered everything, that you know what it means. And I trust you." His words were gentle but firm, carrying a weight that made her chest tighten with gratitude. They were not just words of encouragement. They were a reminder that she had the ability within her all along. She took a deep breath, feeling the breeze brush her face, carrying the scents of the pasture, fresh grass, warm soil, and a hint of leather from the saddles. She let the air fill her lungs, letting go of the tension that had held her heart captive for days. "I suppose I just needed to hear that," she admitted quietly. "I needed to know that someone else believed in me, that someone else could see it the way I do." The cowboy tilted his head slightly, a small, almost imperceptible smile forming on his lips. "It's not about me," he said. "It's about you. Your yes. That's what matters. Everything else is secondary." There was a gentle truth in his words, a wisdom earned from years of experience. He had faced many challenges in his life, and he had learned that the most important battles were not always fought with action. They were fought with courage, with conviction, and with the quiet strength to stand by your own choices. She nodded, feeling the truth of his words sink deep into her heart. For so long, she had doubted herself, second-guessed her decisions, and allowed the fear of making a mistake to hold her back. But now, standing here, with the cowboy's quiet confidence reflecting back at her, she felt a shift within herself. She realized that the power to move forward had always been hers. She only needed to claim it. As they continued to walk along the edge of the pasture, the horses shifted, some trotting lightly toward the fence, curious about the humans nearby. One of the younger horses, a chestnut colt with a playful sparkle in his eyes, nudged at the fence as if to join in the moment. The woman laughed softly, a sound of genuine relief and joy that surprised even her. It felt as if the weight of uncertainty had been lifted, replaced by a growing excitement for what lay ahead. "You know," she said, glancing at the cowboy, "I think part of what scared me was the idea of making this decision alone. But now, it feels different. Like I'm not carrying it by myself, even if you're not telling me what to do." Her words were honest, a reflection of the trust that had been building between them. He nodded, understanding the meaning behind her words. "You're never truly alone," he replied. "Even when it feels like you are, there's always someone who believes in you, even in silence. Sometimes believing is enough to help you find your own way." She smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. It was a simple statement, but it resonated deeply with her. She realized that life's challenges were not always about guidance or instruction. They were about faith. Faith in oneself, and in the quiet support of those who cared enough to stand by you without imposing their own will. The sky above had begun to deepen into shades of purple and gold, and the first stars were starting to appear. The ranch, bathed in the soft, fading light of day, seemed almost magical. She stopped walking and turned to face the cowboy fully, her heart swelling with a mixture of admiration and gratitude. "Thank you," she said simply, her voice soft but filled with meaning. "For being patient, for listening, for letting me find my yes." He gave her a small nod, his expression calm but kind. "You didn't need me to find it," he said. "I just reminded you that it was already there." His words were simple, yet they carried a quiet truth that made her realize how much strength she truly had. It was a moment that would stay with her forever, a reminder that courage was not always loud or dramatic. Sometimes, courage was quiet, steady, and patient, waiting for the right moment to shine. She looked out at the pasture again, at the horses grazing under the dimming light, and felt a new sense of determination. She knew that challenges were still ahead, that obstacles would rise, and that fear might creep back in at times. But now she had something stronger than fear. She had confidence, trust in herself, and the reassurance of someone who believed in her without trying to control her. For a long moment, they stood side by side, watching the day slowly fade into night. The stars above twinkled faintly, and the ranch seemed to hold its breath in quiet anticipation. She felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in a long time, a connection to the land, to the moment, and to the cowboy who had shown her that strength could be found in calmness, and courage could be found in trust. Finally, she spoke again, her voice firm and steady. "I think I'm ready to move forward now. I can do this." Her words were more than a statement. They were a declaration of independence, of strength, and of the power to choose her own path. The cowboy smiled faintly, a quiet approval shining in his eyes. "Then go," he said. "And remember, your yes is all you need. It's enough. It always has been." She felt a thrill of resolve as she nodded. With that small affirmation, she took a deep breath, squared her shoulders, and stepped forward, ready to face whatever lay ahead. The ranch, the horses, the fading light, all of it seemed to welcome her courage, embracing the moment with gentle acceptance. She realized that life would not always be easy, but with trust, patience, and the quiet strength to believe in oneself, there was nothing she could not face. And as they turned back toward the cabin, walking side by side under the growing glow of the first stars, she knew that this moment would stay with her forever. It was a moment of growth, of trust, and of quiet courage, a reminder that sometimes the most profound changes in life began not with a loud declaration, but with a simple, confident yes. The next morning, the ranch awoke to the soft glow of the sun spilling across the fields. Dew sparkled on the grass, and the scent of fresh earth mixed with hay floated in the air. Birds called to one another from the trees, their melodies carrying through the crisp morning. The woman rose early, as she often did, drawn by the stillness and quiet beauty of the ranch. Today felt different, though. There was a new sense of purpose stirring in her chest, a quiet confidence that had been absent before. She walked toward the stables, her boots pressing into the damp earth, listening to the rhythmic sound of her steps. Her mind wandered back to the conversation she had shared with the cowboy the day before. His calm, unwavering presence and simple words had done more than reassure her. They had shifted something inside her. The memory of his eyes, steady and patient, and the way he had said, "I just want your yes," brought a warmth to her chest she hadn't expected. It was as if the world had grown a little brighter, a little more possible. The horses were already moving about in the stables, some nuzzling one another, others stretching their legs after a long night. She smiled softly, running a hand along the neck of her favorite horse, feeling the familiar strength beneath her palm. Animals had always been a source of comfort for her, and today, their quiet presence seemed to echo the calm she had felt in the cowboy's company. It was a reminder that strength didn't always announce itself with noise. It could be gentle, steady, and dependable. The cowboy arrived soon after, moving with his usual calm assurance. He didn't speak immediately, instead watching her interact with the horses. There was no rush in his movements, no need to fill the silence with words. He simply observed, standing a few steps behind her, giving her space while silently lending his presence. It was a quiet lesson she had learned before. Sometimes support didn't need to be spoken. Sometimes it was simply being there. She looked up at him, her eyes meeting his, and found the same steady gaze waiting for her. There was no judgment, no expectation, only understanding and quiet encouragement. "Good morning," she said softly, feeling the day's promise in the sunlight that warmed her face. "Morning," he replied, his voice calm as always. "You seem ready." She hesitated for a moment, unsure if she truly was. The decision she faced was significant, with consequences that could ripple through her life and affect those around her. But she realized that readiness wasn't about fear disappearing, it was about acknowledging it and moving forward anyway. "I think I am," she said finally, her voice gaining strength. "I know what I need to do now. I just need to make sure I stick to it." He nodded as if he understood completely. "And you will," he said. "You've already taken the first step by trusting yourself. The rest is just following through." His calm confidence in her abilities gave her courage. It reminded her that no matter how uncertain she felt, the choice had always been hers to make. They walked together toward the main field, where the wind had picked up slightly, carrying with it the fresh scent of grass and wildflowers. The horses trotted alongside the fence, their movements graceful and unhurried. She felt a strange sense of harmony in the way the ranch seemed to move with her mood. Everything felt alive yet peaceful, as if the land itself supported her decision. As they approached the fence, she stopped and turned to face the cowboy. Her heart raced slightly, not from fear, but from anticipation. She knew the moment had come where she would fully embrace her choice. She had spoken the words in her mind countless times, imagined the relief and freedom that would come with it, and now, standing here in the golden morning light, she felt ready to say them aloud. "I've thought a lot about what I want," she began, her voice steady but gentle. "I've thought about the risks, the responsibilities, everything that comes with this decision, and I want to do it. I'm ready." She paused, searching his face for any hint of reaction, but he remained calm, patient, and still. "That's all that matters," he said quietly, his voice carrying the weight of sincerity. "Your yes, nothing else." She felt a surge of relief, as if a heavy weight had been lifted from her shoulders. His words reminded her that she didn't need anyone else's approval to move forward. Her conviction was enough. And yet, having him there, witnessing her choice, lent it an unspoken strength. It was a confirmation not of her ability but of her courage. The wind picked up, rustling the leaves of the trees and brushing against her hair. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting the sensation ground her, letting herself feel the courage flowing through her veins. When she opened them, the cowboy was still there, his expression calm, waiting. She realized that this was not about him leading her. It was about her stepping into her own power, knowing she had someone who believed in her every step of the way. "I will do it," she said again, more firmly this time. "I will see this through no matter what happens." He nodded once, a simple gesture that carried more meaning than any speech. "Then go forward with confidence," he said. "The rest will follow." She felt a deep sense of purpose settle in her chest. For the first time, she could imagine the path ahead not as something daunting, but as something she was capable of navigating. Every step she had taken up to this point, every moment of doubt and every quiet decision, had led her here. And now she understood that the choice she had been afraid to make was never about fear. It was about trust in herself and in the quiet support of those who cared for her. As the morning sun climbed higher, she took a deep breath and looked around the ranch. The horses moved gracefully across the fields. The wind carried the gentle sounds of nature, and the cowboy stood beside her, a steady presence that reminded her that strength could be calm, courage could be quiet, and support could be simple. She felt ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, knowing that she had claimed her yes and embraced her choice fully. Time seemed to stretch, allowing her to soak in the moment. The ranch felt alive around her, a living, breathing reminder of resilience and possibility. every detail, the soft rustle of leaves, the distant mountains, the warm sunlight, seemed to echo the quiet strength she had found within herself. And in that shared silence, she realized that this moment, this feeling of certainty, was one she would carry with her forever. The cowboy finally spoke, breaking the silence with his calm, even tone. "Remember, it's not about perfection," he said. "It's about moving forward with conviction, even if things aren't perfect. Your yes is enough to start." She smiled, a genuine, heartfelt smile that came from deep within. "I understand," she said, "and I feel ready now. Thank you for helping me find that." He nodded once more, as if to say that the acknowledgement was unnecessary. She had found it on her own. His quiet guidance had been a mirror, reflecting her courage back to her, allowing her to see it clearly for the first time. The day continued, carrying them through the gentle rhythm of ranch life. Tasks were done, horses tended, fences checked, and the sun climbed higher, illuminating the wide-open fields. And through it all, she carried the calm confidence that had begun in the quiet moments with the cowboy. She knew that the path ahead would not always be easy, but she also knew that she could face it. Her yes had given her power, and that power was stronger than any fear or doubt. As evening approached, the sky turned shades of pink and gold once more, and the ranch seemed to glow in the soft light. She stood for a moment, looking at the horizon, feeling the weight of the day's decisions settle into a quiet peace. The cowboy joined her, his presence steady, not needing words to share the moment. And as the first stars began to appear, she felt a sense of completion. This was more than just a decision. It was a turning point, a step into a future shaped by her courage, her choice, and the quiet strength that came from trusting herself. The morning air was crisp, carrying the fresh scent of dew and earth. As the woman stepped out of the small cabin, she felt the weight of her decision, but it no longer pressed down on her chest. Instead, it felt like a steady, warm presence, reminding her of the courage she had claimed the day before. Today, she knew, would be the day to act on her choice, to take the steps she had long imagined but had hesitated to make. The ranch was already alive with activity. Horses moved gracefully across the fields, their hooves tapping gently against the earth. The wind carried the soft creak of gates and the distant call of birds waking from their sleep. Every sound seemed amplified, as if the ranch itself were urging her forward, giving her quiet encouragement. She breathed deeply, letting the morning air fill her lungs, and felt a surge of determination. The cowboy appeared quietly behind her, as he always did, his presence calm yet grounding. He didn't speak immediately. Instead, he watched her carefully, his eyes reflecting both patience and support. She had come to realize that his silence was never emptiness, it was reassurance. He trusted her, not with words but with a steady confidence that told her she could do this. "I think I'm ready," she said softly, turning to him. Her voice no longer carried hesitation. It was steady, calm, and confident. "I've thought through every step. I know what I need to do, and I'm going to do it." He nodded once, a simple gesture that seemed to hold more weight than any speech. "Then let's begin," he said, his voice calm and deliberate. There was no rush, no pressure, only the quiet assurance that she could take the lead and move forward at her own pace. The first task of the day was to prepare the horses for a journey across the fields. The woman approached her favorite horse, brushing down its coat with careful, steady strokes. Every movement felt deliberate, purposeful. The act of preparing the horse became a meditation, a way to focus her mind and ground herself before taking the next steps in her plan. The horse nuzzled her gently, sensing her calm determination, and she smiled, feeling a quiet bond of trust between them. The cowboy tended to the other horses, moving with his usual ease and efficiency. He never rushed, never forced, but always ensured that the animals were safe, calm, and ready. Watching him, she realized that leadership wasn't about command or control. It was about presence, patience, and the ability to inspire confidence through quiet example. She carried that lesson in her mind as she completed her own preparations, feeling more capable with each passing moment. Once the horses were ready, they began to move across the fields. The wind brushed against her face, carrying with it the sense of grass, earth, and freedom. She felt a thrill of excitement and anticipation. Every step they took across the open land felt symbolic, as if each hoofbeat was a small declaration of her courage. The decision she had made yesterday was no longer abstract. It was alive in her actions, in every movement, and in every choice she made along the way. As they progressed, challenges began to arise, small but testing. A fallen branch blocked their path, and a sudden gust of wind spooked one of the younger horses. She felt her heart rate increase, but she remembered the calm steadiness of the cowboy's presence. She breathed deeply, letting his patience guide her, and handled each situation with care. She soothed the frightened horse, guiding it gently past the obstacle, and felt a quiet triumph in overcoming her first challenge. The cowboy watched without interfering, offering guidance only when necessary. "Take your time," he said softly when she hesitated. "You've got this." His words were few, but they carried a quiet authority that reminded her of her own strength. She realized that having someone believe in you, even silently, could make all the difference when facing uncertainty. By midday, they reached a small ridge overlooking the valley below. The view stretched endlessly, with green fields, winding streams, and clusters of trees painting a serene landscape. The woman paused, feeling the magnitude of the journey they had undertaken and the choices she had made. It was a moment of reflection, a chance to honor her courage and the effort it had taken to step forward. "This is beautiful," she said quietly, taking it all in. The horizon seemed to mirror the sense of possibility she felt within herself. Every decision, every challenge had led her to this moment, and she understood that beauty wasn't just in the landscape, it was in the journey itself. The cowboy stood beside her, his calm presence grounding the moment. "It is," he said. "And it's a reminder that the path you choose will always have moments like this, moments worth every effort." His words were simple, yet they carried a deep truth. Life's rewards often came quietly, in the stillness after effort, in the view after the climb, and in the sense of accomplishment that followed courage. As they prepared to descend the ridge, they encountered a more significant obstacle. A narrow path led down to the stream, with loose rocks and uneven terrain. The woman's confidence wavered slightly, but she reminded herself of the courage she had claimed. She remembered the cowboy's calm words, the trust he had placed in her, and she took a steadying breath. One careful step at a time, she guided her horse along the path, feeling the thrill of overcoming a real challenge. The cowboy followed, ensuring the path was safe, but allowing her to lead. He offered a reassuring word or gentle gesture when needed, never taking control, but always providing support. She felt a growing sense of pride in herself, not for impressing him, but for proving to herself that she could face obstacles with patience, care, and courage. By the time they reached the stream, the sun was beginning to dip toward the horizon, casting a warm glow across the water. They paused to let the horses drink, and she allowed herself a moment to rest. Her body was tired from the journey, but her spirit felt energized and alive. She had faced challenges, taken action, and handled each obstacle with steady hands and a clear mind. The sense of accomplishment was deeply satisfying. The cowboy finally spoke more fully, his calm voice carrying across the water. "You've done well today," he said. "Not because you followed a path I set, but because you trusted yourself to find the way." His words struck her with quiet force. It wasn't about approval, it was about recognition of her own capability. She realized that the courage she had claimed yesterday had not disappeared. It had grown stronger with every step she had taken. As they continued along the stream, the journey became smoother. though still requiring attention and care. They navigated gentle slopes, guided the horses through soft mud, and stepped over small fallen logs. Each obstacle was a reminder that action often required patience, perseverance, and trust in oneself. She found herself smiling quietly at the sense of mastery growing within her, a mastery not over others, but over her own fears and hesitations. By evening, they reached the edge of the valley, where the sun painted the sky in deep oranges and soft purples. The view was breathtaking, a reward for the effort and courage of the day. She felt a profound sense of gratitude, not just for the success of the journey, but for the lessons learned along the way. Challenges were not meant to be feared. They were meant to teach patience, resilience, and self-trust. The cowboy turned to her, his expression calm and approving. "You've taken your first steps well," he said. "Remember, the journey is ongoing. There will be more challenges, but you've proven that you can handle them." His words were not boastful or condescending. They were grounded in genuine respect and observation. She felt that respect deeply, knowing that he saw her courage and determination without needing her to prove herself further. As the last rays of sunlight faded, they began the walk back to the ranch. The evening air was cool, carrying the soft scent of earth and grass. The woman's steps were steady, her heart lighter than it had been in days. She had taken action, faced obstacles, and grown stronger through every challenge. The journey was far from over, but she now had confidence in her ability to navigate whatever lay ahead. By the time they returned to the cabin, stars had begun to appear in the darkening sky. The horses were settled back into the stables, calm and content. The woman took a final moment to reflect on the day. She had acted on her choice, faced the consequences of her decisions, and discovered a deeper strength within herself. The cowboy's quiet support had been invaluable, but the triumph belonged to her alone. She had claimed her yes, and in doing so, she had claimed herself. As they stood on the porch, looking out over the ranch under the soft glow of moonlight, she felt a profound sense of peace. The journey had tested her, challenged her, and shown her what she was capable of. And she knew that tomorrow, and every day after, she would face life with the same courage and determination. The decision she had made was no longer a question. It was a path, and she was walking it with confidence, patience, and quiet strength. The morning sun rose slowly over the ranch, casting soft golden light across the fields. The dew still clung to the grass, sparkling like tiny crystals, and the scent of fresh earth mixed with the faint aroma of hay. It was a calm, peaceful morning, the kind that carried with it a sense of new beginnings. The woman stood at the edge of the field, taking in the beauty of the world around her. She felt different than she had a few days ago, stronger, more certain, more alive. The decision she had made and acted upon in the days before had changed something inside her. It was not a sudden, magical transformation, but a quiet, steady growth that had taken root in her heart. She had faced challenges, solved problems, and discovered that her courage and determination were stronger than she had imagined. Now, standing on the soft earth with the wind brushing her face, she felt a sense of clarity that was both comforting and empowering. The cowboy appeared quietly beside her as he always did. He did not need to announce himself. She could sense him before she saw him, his presence steady and reassuring. He had been with her through every step of this journey, offering patience, calm guidance, and quiet support without ever trying to take control. She had learned something important from him. True strength was not loud or forceful. It was gentle, steady, and patient, inspiring confidence without demanding it. "Good morning," she said softly, her voice carrying a new sense of confidence. "Morning," he replied, his voice calm as always. "I see that you're ready today," she nodded. "I am. I feel whole in a way I didn't before. I can face what comes next without fear." The words felt natural as she spoke them aloud, carrying with them the quiet pride of accomplishment. She understood that the path ahead would have challenges, but she was no longer afraid. She had discovered her own strength, and that discovery was far more valuable than any answer she could have received from anyone else. They began walking toward the main pasture together, the morning light casting long, soft shadows across the land. The horses were already awake, moving gracefully across the fields, their movements calm and confident. Watching them reminded her of her own journey, the small steps, the careful choices, and the courage it took to keep moving forward, even when the path was uncertain. Each step she took alongside the cowboy seemed to mirror the rhythm of the horses, steady and purposeful. "Yesterday," she began, glancing at him, "I realized something important. That yes I gave, it wasn't just about the decision itself. It was about believing in myself. And I couldn't have reached that without your calm support." She paused, unsure if the words fully expressed her gratitude. He smiled faintly, a small, quiet smile. "You had it all along," he said. "I only reminded you to see it. Courage, confidence, determination, these were already inside you. I just helped you notice them." His voice was gentle, but each word carried a depth of truth that made her chest swell with emotion. They reached a clearing where the horses grazed, and she watched them for a moment, feeling a sense of connection to the land, the animals, and the life around her. It was a reminder that life's challenges were not meant to be faced alone, but neither were they meant to be feared. The strength to overcome them existed within, waiting to be discovered through action, patience, and trust. The cowboy handed her a small bag of supplies, tools she might need as she continued her work across the ranch. "Everything you need is here," he said. "And remember, if you ever doubt yourself, just take a moment to breathe. Trust yourself. You already know the way." His words were calm, but they carried a steady confidence that bolstered her resolve. She felt a wave of reassurance, knowing that he trusted her abilities and judgment completely. As the day moved forward, she worked diligently across the ranch. She repaired fences that had been damaged by the wind, tended to the horses, and prepared areas of the pasture for feeding. Each task, though simple on the surface, required attention, patience, and careful thought. She discovered that action was just as important as decision-making. Her yes had given her courage, but her follow-through was what solidified it, proving to herself that she could turn choices into results. The cowboy watched occasionally, offering advice only when needed, otherwise allowing her space to learn and grow. His quiet presence was a reminder that guidance didn't always require words. Sometimes it was enough to simply stand beside someone, offering confidence through patience and understanding. She began to see that the lessons he had imparted were not just about the tasks at hand, they were about life itself, about trust, courage, and the power to believe in oneself. By late afternoon, the sun had climbed high, and the ranch was bathed in warm light. She paused for a moment, wiping her brow and taking in the view. The field stretched endlessly, green and alive under the sun. The animals were content, moving peacefully as if sensing the calm confidence she carried. She felt a deep sense of satisfaction, not just from the work she had accomplished, but from the realization that she had grown through it. She was no longer the hesitant, uncertain woman who had asked for guidance a few days ago. She was strong, capable, and ready for whatever life would bring. The cowboy joined her once more, standing quietly beside her. "You've done well," he said simply. "Not just today, but in every step leading up to this moment. You've faced challenges, made choices, and acted on them. That's courage." She smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. "It doesn't feel like courage," she admitted softly. "It feels like freedom. Like I finally trust myself." Her voice carried the sincerity of someone who had discovered something deeply important, the ability to rely on her own strength and judgment. He nodded, his expression calm and approving. "It's both," he said. "Courage and freedom are connected. You can't truly be free without the courage to make your own choices." As the sun began its slow descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. She felt a profound sense of completion. The journey she had undertaken, both inward and outward, had brought her to a place of peace and confidence. The challenges, the uncertainty, the moments of fear, they had all led to this moment where she could stand tall and know that she had done more than make a decision. She had grown into someone who could face life with steady courage. They walked together back to the cabin, the horses following at a leisurely pace. The wind carried a gentle rustle through the trees, and the distant mountains seemed to glow in the last light of day. She felt a sense of gratitude not just for the cowboy, but for the journey itself, for every moment that had tested her, every small victory, and every quiet lesson learned along the way. When they reached the porch, she paused and looked out over the fields once more. The sun was almost gone, and the sky had softened into a gentle twilight. It was a moment of reflection, a chance to honor both her courage and the calm support that had guided her. She realized that life's most important victories were often quiet, not announced with fanfare but deeply felt in the heart. The cowboy stood beside her, offering nothing but his presence. She turned to him, her eyes shining with gratitude and understanding. "Thank you," she said softly, knowing that no words could fully capture what she felt. "For everything, for your patience, your calm, and for helping me see what I could do on my own." He smiled, a gentle, knowing smile. "You didn't need me to do it for you," he said. "You only needed someone to remind you that the strength was already inside you, and now you've claimed it." She nodded, feeling the truth of his words resonate deeply within her. She understood that the journey was not about dependence, but about empowerment. She had discovered that courage was not something given by others. It was something you claimed by acting on your own convictions, trusting yourself, and persevering through challenges. As night fell, the ranch settled into quiet calm. The horses rested in their stalls, the wind whispered softly through the trees, and the sky above was dotted with stars that twinkled gently. She stood for a moment longer on the porch, feeling a profound connection to the land, to life, and to the journey she had undertaken. She felt ready for whatever came next, not because life would be easy, but because she had discovered the strength to face it. The cowboy remained beside her, calm and steady, a reminder that guidance could be gentle, support could be quiet, and courage could be found in the simplest of affirmations. She realized that this moment, the peace, the confidence, the understanding, would stay with her forever. It was not the end of a story, but the beginning of a new chapter, one shaped by her choices, her courage, and the quiet power of a simple yes. As she finally turned to go inside the cabin, she whispered to herself, "I said yes, and it changed everything." The words felt right, carrying both reflection and hope. She understood that life's greatest transformations were not always loud or dramatic, but often found in quiet moments of courage, trust, and self-discovery. And with that, she stepped forward, ready to embrace her future with a heart full of confidence, strength, and peace.